Before my sister-in-law's anniversary dinner, I swapped the card in my clutch and said nothing. When the $265,000 check arrived, my husband reached in smiling and found what I'd planted. The terminal beeped. One hard, flat, unfriendly sound that cut through the laughter and the chandelier light and the white rose smell of the most expensive room in Dallas. Then silence. And in that silence, my husband's face, the face I had loved, defended, and covered for across 7 years, 3 months, and 11 days, did the most honest thing it had done in years. It cracked. He said, "Try it again." The server did. Another beep. Louder this time, or maybe the room had just gone still enough to feel it in your sternum. Declined. $26,500, 14 guests, 1 photographer hovering near the bar, and an inactive card I had planted in my own clutch at 4:30 that afternoon with the steadiest hands I've ever owned. I didn't move. I didn't apologize. I didn't save them. Not this time. My name is Lila Hale. I'm 36 years old. I hold a controlling interest in a mid-market commercial real estate firm called St. Meridian, which my late father-in-law Robert built over 20 years and which I helped rebuild after he died. I am not a dramatic person by nature. I am organized, precise, and, for most of my adult life, deeply, pathologically allergic to conflict, which is how I ended up here. But I need to back up, because you don't arrive at a moment like that one without a road that led you there. And this road was longer and uglier and quieter than it had any right to be. I met Ethan Hale at a fundraiser in 2016, when I was 30 and he was 32, and the kind of charming that makes you wonder later if charm was the whole product. He was funny, he was warm, he touched the small of my back like he meant it. We dated for 18 months, got engaged, married in a small ceremony in Marfa, and moved into the house I owned outright in Lakewood, a craftsman bungalow I'd bought on a lawyer's salary 3 years out of law school, held in a separate trust, protected by a prenuptial agreement my father had insisted on with the quiet ferocity of a man who trusted concrete more than sentiment. Ethan said the prenup was fine. Ethan said a lot of things were fine. I met his sister Marissa at Christmas that first year. She was 34, beautiful in that polished, studied way, and she came with a boutique called Hale & Honey in Highland Park that sold curated blazers, overpriced candles, and a brand identity built almost entirely on her personal charisma. She kissed both my cheeks and told me I was exactly what she'd hoped Ethan would end up with. I thought it was a compliment. That was my first mistake. The second came 6 weeks later, on Christmas Eve in my mother-in-law's kitchen, with me basting a ham and Marissa leaning against the counter, asking if I could just float her $4,000 until January because she had overdone it at Neiman's. "Not like a business thing," she said, laughing, touching my arm like we were old friends. "As family." When I hesitated, she didn't push. She just left the word family in the air, like perfume. I mentioned it to Ethan in bed that night. He turned over, already half asleep. "She'll pay you back after New Year's, and even if she doesn't, she's my sister. She never paid me back." By year 2, airline tickets to Cabo because her card had gotten flagged. By year 3, a vendor deposit for the boutique because a client payment was late. By year 4, a temporary payroll gap. Her words, not mine. By year 5, Ethan quietly used my annual bonus to cover the shortfall on a lease Marissa had signed for a larger retail space, after I sat them both down and showed them, line by line, why the numbers didn't support it. "She just needs momentum," he told me from the passenger seat while I gripped the steering wheel hard enough for the leather to creak. "You don't understand branding the way she does." I understood math. I understood cash flow. I understood the particular expression Marissa made when I paid for something she'd already decided she deserved. Not grateful exactly, more like satisfied, like a cat who's found a door left open. The hardest part was never Marissa. People like Marissa announce themselves early if you're willing to see them. The hardest part was Ethan, because every surrender came wrapped in the language of love. "Just this once, babe. She's under pressure. You know how she is. Don't make me choose between my wife and my family." That last one was his favorite. He only ever said it after he had already chosen, so I stayed quiet. I told myself it was patience. I told myself it was kindness. I told myself that being easy, being useful, being the woman no one could call difficult was some kind of grace. What it actually was, I was financing my own diminishment and calling it love. The Tuesday it changed started before sunrise, 6:14 a.m., coffee cooling on the island, Ethan still in the shower. My laptop opened to the St. Meridian quarterly dashboard, which I reviewed every morning because good numbers don't maintain themselves. I almost deleted the email. The subject line was generic, collateral documentation updated, the kind of automated message banks send when they rename a portal or update a policy. But I recognized the account suffix in the preview text, the Hale Family Investment account. I opened it. Then I read the attached files once, then again, then a third time, slower, because my brain kept refusing what my eyes were showing it. Ethan had signed a personal guarantee in favor of Northlake Private Lending for a $1.2 million expansion loan to Marissa's boutique company. Buried in the collateral schedule were 2 line items. The first, his block of inherited St. Meridian shares. The second, a spousal consent page bearing my signature. My signature. Not an approximation, not a rushed scrawl. A clean, practiced copy of my actual signature, lifted from somewhere legitimate and dropped onto a document I had never seen. I remember the sound the refrigerator made in that moment, that low mechanical hum from across the kitchen. I remember the coffee going bitter. I remember my first thought wasn't fury, it was clarity. That told me more than anything how bad things had gotten. I wasn't shocked. I was recognizing something. Some part of me had already been living beside the possibility of this betrayal for a long time. I just refused to name it because named things require action. Ethan came downstairs toweling his hair, barefoot, handsome. He kissed my temple, went to the fridge, asked if I wanted eggs. I turned the laptop toward him. "What is this?" He looked down. For just a second, maybe less, the truth crossed his face, completely unguarded. Then he put the mask back on. "Why are you in that account?" I stared at him. "You forged my signature. It's not forgery." His tone shifted before the sentence even finished, pivoting to defensive, irritated, almost bored, as if the offensive thing here was that I'd interrupted his morning with facts. It was a timing issue. Northlake needed the packet turned around fast. It's secured. It's temporary. Daniel's already aware there might be a pledge review on the shares. Daniel's already aware. Daniel Hayes was our CFO, had been for 11 years since Robert hired him. He was 62, silver-haired, precise to the point of severity. Daniel did not casually become aware of things. If he knew something, documents had moved. Timelines existed. This had been in motion. "How long?" I asked. Ethan set the milk on the counter and sighed. "Lila, please don't do the courtroom voice with me in my own kitchen." There it was, that instinctive pivot, my alarm becoming the problem instead of his crime. "How long?" He raked a hand through his wet hair. "A few weeks. A few weeks. Several weeks of my name attached to a $1.2 million loan I never approved, pledging assets I co-held, and he had asked if I wanted eggs. You have two options," I said quietly. "You can explain this to me right now, or I can make calls before noon." He folded his arms. "You're acting like I stole something." The sentence just hung there. I looked at him for a long moment, at the man I had defended to friends, to therapists, to myself, the man whose charm had always looked so much like goodness until money got involved. "You did," I said. He scoffed and left for work. I sat at the island for 4 more minutes. Then I picked up my phone and called the one person I trusted to tell me the truth without softening it. Daniel was already in the St. Meridian Finance conference room when I arrived. Jacket off, sleeves rolled, laptop open beside a stack of documents aligned with surgical precision. He looked up the second I stepped inside. "You saw it, not a question." I closed the glass door. "You knew." He took his glasses off, set them carefully on the table. I knew there had been a pledge request involving Ethan's shares and that outside collateral review had begun. I did not know he had submitted a spousal consent with your signature until compliance sent the overnight packet at 5:40 this morning. He paused. "I was coming to your office the moment you walked in." That mattered. In a week where I'd learned how low my husband would go, honesty felt like a handrail. I sat across from him. "Tell me exactly how bad this is." Daniel didn't flinch. "Fixable, but serious." He laid it out. Robert Hale's shareholder agreement, the one he'd written before he died with the particular care of a man who understood that family and money are a dangerous combination, was intentionally strict. No inherited voting block could be pledged to an outside lender without board disclosure, a legal review, and written consent from any spouse whose assets or signature appeared in the transaction packet. If that happened anyway without those safeguards, St. Meridian had the right to force redemption of the shares. If the company declined to exercise that right, an approved internal buyer could step in. An approved internal buyer, I repeated. Daniel met my eyes. "You." 3 hours later, I was sitting across from Olivia Carr on the 31st floor of a building in Uptown, watching her annotate my marriage with a fountain pen. Olivia Carr, Eskew. 15 years specializing in high net worth family litigation and business exposure. The kind of attorney who never raises her voice because she discovered early in her career that facts delivered softly land harder than facts delivered loudly. She had reviewed the forged consent, the collateral schedule, 7 years of account history, and my prenuptial agreement before looking up. "How much do you want to save?" she asked. It was such a precise question that I cried. Not dramatically, just a quiet betrayal by my own face. Tears slipping free before I'd decided I was allowed to have them. Olivia slid the tissue box closer without comment. "The company," I said, "my exposure, my house, my sanity, and the marriage?" I looked down at the forged signature. I think he answered that for me. From there, everything moved. Not magically. I want to be clear about that. There was nothing cinematic about the following 10 days. Just work. Methodical, unglamorous, necessary work. Olivia filed notice with Northlake that the spousal consent was contested, which triggered an immediate review. Daniel alerted the board chair, Vanessa Colby, a woman who had known Robert Hale for 20 years and had the particular patience of someone who has watched male incompetence disguise itself as family stewardship one too many times. Compliance opened an internal review. Outside counsel was retained. My payroll and distributions were redirected into a new personal account under an LLC. Olivia had helped me establish years earlier for asset protection, and which I had never needed to use in earnest until now. I removed Ethan as an authorized user from every account that touched my income. I closed the old black card tied to the joint discretionary line. I froze the household reserve account pending separation analysis. I changed the passcodes on my devices and the home security system. Then I went home every night and pretended nothing had changed. That was the strangest part. Ethan must have sensed something shifting in me, but because he consistently mistook quiet for weakness, he misread the silence completely. He thought he was getting away with something. He thought my composure meant delay, and delay had always meant eventual forgiveness. He kissed my cheek, asked if I wanted sushi, complained about Marissa's stress levels as if he were the exhausted party. "Once the boutique stabilizes," he said one night from behind the television remote, remote. I really think this will all pay off. Not once did he apologize for the forged signature. Not once did he say my name with shame in it. The board meeting took place Friday. Daniel and I presented the quarterly operations package first, because work does not pause to accommodate heartbreak, and then legal came in. Ethan was not invited. Vanessa reviewed the shareholder agreement violation and asked whether I wished to exercise the internal buy option personally. I do, I said. She nodded once. Then let the record reflect that Ms. Hale has elected to purchase the block through Hale Rowan Holdings, contingent upon outside counsel's closing memo and lender notice. The vote passed unanimously. I didn't feel victorious. Mostly I felt tired in a way that sat in my bones. There is nothing glamorous about protecting yourself from people who should have protected you first. By Monday, Olivia had drafted the separation documents. By Tuesday, Northlake had issued a notice of default to Marissa's company, unauthorized collateral, related misrepresentations, contested consent. By Wednesday, the share transfer funding was in motion. By Thursday afternoon, the closing package was scheduled to finalize. Thursday night was Marissa's anniversary dinner. Of course it was. She had been planning the dinner for 3 months as a public monument to herself, the 5th anniversary of Hale & Honey. She'd reserved the private dining room at St. Clair, the best restaurant in downtown Dallas. She'd ordered Magnum bottles she couldn't afford. She'd had custom menus printed with her logo embossed in gold. She'd arranged for a croquembouche shaped like a perfume bottle to be wheeled out after dessert, and she'd called Ethan to tell him not to stress me with the details, because she was going to present the check, the actual leather check folder with the actual $26,500 tab, as a performance, with a photographer, with a toast, with a room full of investors and social media contacts watching. She texted me at noon, "Don't be late. The photographer is getting candids of the payment moment." Ethan was knotting his tie in the bathroom mirror when he said, "Bring the black card, okay?" She booked the reserve wine pairing. Not, "Can we afford this?" Not, "Is that all right with you?" Not, "I'm sorry she keeps doing this. Just bring the black card." As if my role in his family had been engraved somewhere in the marriage license between wife and witness. Woman who pays when things become embarrassing. I looked at his reflection. "Of course," I said. At 4:30 that afternoon, in our dressing room, with a silk slip-on and one earring in, I opened my clutch. I removed the new card linked to my personal account and put it in the hidden zipper compartment of another bag I wouldn't be carrying tonight. Then I placed the old black card, the inactive one from the closed joint line, into the main slot where Ethan always reached without looking. I checked my reflection once, adjusted my earrings, felt a steadiness settle over me so complete it was almost cold. You are not going to save them from this. The private dining room at St. Clair was arranged like a campaign event for an expensive lie. White roses, candlelight, custom place cards, a champagne tower by the bar, a long mirrored shelf displaying bottles Marissa could not have paid for outright. People air-kissed, coats disappeared, servers moved like choreography. Marissa swept over in cream silk, trailing perfume. "There she is," she sang, touching my arm. "Very corporate and very expensive. Perfect." Then she turned to Ethan and kissed both his cheeks. "You got my text about the payment moment, right?" "Of course," he said. "Good." A smile. "Don't let me down." She said it playfully, but not entirely. That was always the thing about Marissa, the truth tucked inside the joke like a blade inside a bouquet. Dinner unspooled in courses. Crudo, butter-poached lobster, dry-aged ribeye, a wine pairing aggressive enough to feel like commentary. At one point, an investor across the table asked how involved I was in the family businesses, and before I could answer, Marissa cut in, "Oh, Lila's the serious one. She keeps the lights on while the rest of us enjoy life." Everyone chuckled politely. I smiled. Women are trained young to make other people comfortable while they're being reduced in public. Later, Marissa reached across the table and squeezed Ethan's wrist and said, "You've always understood my value. Always." The intimacy of it wasn't romantic. It was older than that, more corrosive. A lifetime of him treating her wants as sacred and everyone else's limits as negotiable. Then came dessert. Then came the photographer drifting closer. Then came Marissa rising from her chair. She raised her coupe and smiled at the room the way some women smile at mirrors, already satisfied with what they assume everyone must be seeing. "To family," she said, "to loyalty, to people who show up, and to my brother, who understands that if you love someone, you don't do it halfway." She tipped her chin toward the leather folder beside Ethan's plate. $26,500, she announced, loud enough for the neighboring table. "Come on, brother. Show everybody how much you love me." Someone said iconic under her breath. Ethan's shoulders rolled back, that eager, boyish pride he always found when Marissa put him on display. He reached for my clutch, and my heart started pounding. Not because I was surprised, because I wasn't. He opened the clutch, reached inside, pulled out the card, handed it to the server, gave Marissa a smug, almost flirtatious grin. "Happy anniversary, Riss." The terminal lit up. The server inserted the card. A beat passed, then another. The machine emitted a sharp, unfriendly beep. Everyone heard it. "Try it again," Ethan said. Another beep. Declined. The word landed on the table like a knife laid flat between plates. Marissa's smile twitched first, then flattened. "Don't do the thing where you pretend the machine's broken," she said, soft laugh fraying. "Just pay it." The server glanced at Ethan, polite and trapped. "Sir, it says the card is inactive." "Inactive, not declined for funds, not flagged for fraud. Inactive." Ethan squinted at the card as if the numbers might rearrange out of loyalty. Then he looked at me at last. "Lila," too quickly. "What's going on?" I folded my hands in my lap. The flush had climbed climbed his neck above his collar. He was keeping his smile on his face, but only for the room. Up close, his eyes were panicked. Across the table, Marissa sat back and crossed her legs, still believing, even now, that this story would end the way they always had, with me paying, with Ethan smoothing things over. "She's been getting weird," Marissa said, loud enough for 6 people to hear. "Ever since she started making real money, she acts like every family event is an audit." For years, that line would have burned through me. Calculated to make any defense sound humorless. Humiliate you, then accuse you of overreacting if you flinch. "Do you want me to explain why the account was closed?" I asked. Nobody answered. "Last month," I said, "Ethan pledged inherited St. Meridian shares and a marital investment account as collateral for your boutique expansion loan." Marissa's expression changed. Not surprise, recognition, which told its own story. I turned to Ethan. He also submitted a spousal consent page with my forged signature. The silence after that was so complete I could hear ice settling in a glass 3 seats away. Marissa recovered first. "That is such a manipulative way to frame it. He was handling paperwork. Everyone knew you'd agree." "You knew," I said. She folded her arms. "I knew Ethan was helping me. You knew my signature was on documents I never saw." Her mouth opened, closed. Ethan jumped in. He always jumped in when Marissa risked having to answer for herself. "Enough. We are not discussing company matters in a restaurant. That would have been a stronger argument," I said. "If you hadn't chosen this same restaurant to stage a public payment with my money." His face went hard. "This is between us." "No, it stopped being between us when you attached my name to fraud." "Don't say that." "Why? Because it's accurate? Because you're trying to humiliate me." Such a perfect Ethan sentence. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "I shouldn't have done it." The audience was always, to him, the worst part of any consequence. I glanced at the server, who was still standing there with the terminal in both hands. "Would you give us 1 minute?" He looked like a man who had just been offered oxygen. Ethan leaned forward, voice low, controlled. "What do you want?" There it was. "What do you want?" Not "what do you need?" or "what did I do?" or "how do I fix it?" As if accountability were an unreasonable luxury item I might demand in a mood. "I wanted a husband who didn't use my signature like a spare key," I said. "I wanted not to wake up to a bank packet telling me my name had been used to back a loan I never approved. I wanted not to spend 7 years cleaning up financial messes while you called me difficult every time I asked for receipts. I wanted 1 holiday, 1 trip, 1 dinner, 1 emergency where I wasn't expected to function as your personal reserve fund." "Can you lower your voice?" he said. "No." He stared at me, as if he had never heard that word in my mouth before. "Fine," he said through clenched teeth. "What is this then? A punishment?" "No, it's a boundary. You're just not used to hearing one from me." Marissa let out a short, brittle laugh. "Boundary. You sound like those podcast women who get dumped and start saying words like alignment and self-worth." A few people at the far end shifted in their seats. I looked at her. "Your boutique is in default." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Marissa's lips parted. "What?" "The lender issued notice yesterday because the collateral package included a contested spousal consent and a prohibited share pledge. Your loan is in technical default. Olivia sent copies this afternoon." "Olivia?" "My attorney." Ethan's color drained. "Your attorney?" "Yes." I held his gaze. "My attorney." It is a strange thing to watch a man realize, publicly, that his wife has stopped assuming they're on the same side. You can see the math reworking itself behind his eyes. All the old levers suddenly useless. Charm won't reach, delay won't help, anger might, but only if the other person still cares about staying. "You hired a divorce attorney before talking to me?" "I talked to you the morning I found the forged signature," I said. "You told me not to use the courtroom voice in your kitchen." His mouth closed. I reached for my phone, opened the message thread with Daniel Hayes, typed 1 line. "Please confirm closing now." His reply came almost immediately. "Calling." I tapped accept, put the phone on speaker. Daniel's voice entered the room like a ruler laid flat across chaos. "Lila, we've closed. Wire confirmed at 8:41 p.m. Board counter signature is logged. Hale Rowan Holdings now owns Ethan Hale's redeemed block. Legal has completed service packets for related notices. Congratulations." Marissa stared at the phone as if it had started speaking Latin. Ethan looked like all the blood had left his body through a wound he couldn't find. "What closing?" he said hoarsely. "The forced redemption you triggered when you pledged your shares without authorization," I said. "The internal buy option I exercised after legal review. The one Daniel and the board finalized tonight. You bought my shares? I protected the company from your choices. You can't just—" "She can't," Daniel said through the speaker, calm as a closing argument. "The documents were lawful, reviewed, and executed pursuant to the shareholder agreement your father signed and you ignored. There are moments when humiliation turns into comprehension right in front of you. You can see the ego fighting the facts, rewriting them on instinct, and then failing because the facts are too well built." Ethan sank into his chair. Marissa whispered, "This is about money? You did all this over money?" I looked at her with a kind of tired amazement. "No," I said. "I did this because you kept confusing access with love." No one spoke. Daniel cleared his throat gently. "Lila, Olivia, and the process server should be arriving shortly. Do you need anything else?" "No, thank you." "I'm sorry it came to this." "So am I." I ended the call. From the doorway, a woman's voice said, "Mrs. Hale?" Every head turned. Olivia Carr stood there in a charcoal suit, leather folio under one arm, flanked by a licensed process server and one of her associates. She looked like order itself had learned to carry a fountain pen. She crossed the room without hurry. "Good evening," she said, with just enough warmth to remind me I was not alone. Then she turned to the room with the particular clarity of someone who has delivered bad news in expensive places before. I have the executed closing memo, the petition, and the default service packets. Marissa made a small, strangled sound. You had your lawyer come to dinner? Olivia glanced at her. You made a public spectacle out of private exploitation. The setting was already chosen. She handed Ethan a sealed envelope. He didn't take it at first. The process server stepped forward. Mr. Hale, you are hereby served. A second envelope went to Nolan. Notice of lender default. Demand to preserve inventory and records for Hale and Honey LLC. Any attempt to move assets after service, Olivia added pleasantly, may create additional liability. Marissa grabbed for the envelope. You can't do this in front of everyone. Your company used collateral supported by a contested spousal consent and a prohibited share pledge, Olivia said. The lender has rights. So does my client. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I mostly felt my body returning to itself after years of being rented out in pieces. Ethan looked at me over the table. You planned all of this. Yes, you wanted to destroy me. I thought about that. Really thought about it. No, I said. I wanted to stop you from destroying me. His eyes filled. Not cleanly. Just enough to let me see every earlier version of him. The funny one, the tender one, the man who used to bring me coffee on Saturday mornings and rub circles on my back when work kept me up. It would have been easier if he'd been a villain all the way through. Easier and less true. I messed up, he said, voice cracking. I know I did. But this, in front of everyone, not the forged signature, not the debt, not the theft of trust, the audience. That was what hurt him most. Yes, I said softly, in front of everyone, because that's where you liked spending my dignity. His face crumpled. I looked at the server, still standing there with the terminal, trapped in rich people's wreckage on a Thursday night. I opened my phone, selected the card linked to my personal account, tapped, approved. The tone was soft, clean, fine. A small sound moved through the room, not applause, more like the shared exhale of strangers who had just watched a verdict land. I reached into my clutch, removed the old black card, set it on top of the leather folder in front of Ethan. This, I said, is the last dead thing of mine you'll ever try to use. Then I picked up my bag, nodded to Olivia, and walked toward the door. The room parted the way crowds part for certainty. Not because I was loud, not because I was cruel, because for once I looked like a woman who knew exactly where the edge was, and had no intention of stepping back over it for anyone. Outside, the Dallas night met me all at once. Cool air, traffic wash, the soft flash of headlights sliding past the valet stand. My hands were shaking, not with doubt, with aftermath. Olivia came out behind me while the driver opened the town car. You did well, she said. I laughed once, unsteadily. Is that the standard post-service review? It means you remained clear, she said. Most people blur when emotion finally catches up. I looked back through the restaurant windows. Gold light, moving silhouettes, other people's evenings continuing. I kept thinking I'd feel bigger, I said. More dramatic, more vindicated. Olivia's expression softened. Relief rarely looks cinematic. I got into the car. On the drive home, I watched the city slide past. Office towers, neon, two women laughing outside a hotel with their arms linked. Ordinary life, indifferent and intact. When I got in, the house smelled like gardenias from an arrangement I'd ordered the previous Sunday. Some buried instinct already knowing that when this was over, I'd want the space to feel like mine again. The silence inside was almost holy. I kicked off my heels, poured a glass of water, stood barefoot in my kitchen. Then I walked to the door connecting the kitchen to the garage and opened it. Marissa's boxes were stacked exactly where she'd left them. 13 months of her inventory living in my space, rent-free, while I walked around it like it was furniture. Fall knits, holiday candles, display hardware, one box split at the corner, tissue paper spilling out like a white flag. I stood there for a long moment. Then I laughed, because that was the whole marriage, wasn't it? In cardboard, on my concrete floor. I shut the door and went upstairs. 3 months later, the boxes were gone by Sunday. The garage has room to walk through now. The separation became a filing date, then a schedule, then a set of clean obligations with deadlines. Ethan's attorney made a brief attempt to challenge the house occupancy demand and withdrew after Olivia sent over the prenup exhibits. Marissa's expansion lease collapsed. Her store survived. Smaller, quieter, finally connected to the consequences of its own numbers. On the third Monday after the dinner, I took Ethan's seat at the board table permanently. No one made a speech about it. Vanessa handed me the revised agenda and said, "Let's begin." And we did. That evening, I drove home through light rain and let myself in through the front door with groceries against my hip. Salmon, lemons, a bottle of white wine I bought because I wanted it, not because it matched anyone else's taste. I made dinner for one and ate it standing at the island, barefoot. No need to explain the shape of the silence to anyone. Later, I took my glass to the back porch. The crepe myrtles were bending in the breeze. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once, then settled. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask anything of you. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. You really think you won? I didn't need a name. I never did. I looked at the words for a moment, then I typed back exactly one sentence. I think I stopped losing. I blocked the number before the dots could appear. The rain picked up, soft at first, then steady. For the first time in years, nothing in my life felt borrowed. Nothing felt under negotiation. Nothing felt one argument away from being taken and renamed family obligation. I had not gotten out clean. No one ever really does. There were still attorneys ahead, and paperwork, and lonely stretches, and the humiliating administrative labor of untangling a life you once believed was shared. There would be stories told about me in rooms I'd never enter. Cold in some versions, ruthless in others, controlling and the ones written by people who find a woman's self-protection obscene. Let them write them. I knew what had happened in the bright gold light of that restaurant. I knew what had happened in my kitchen before dawn with forged ink under my name. I knew what had happened every time I was told not to make it weird, not to be difficult, not to make it about money when money was the lever they kept pressing into my ribs. And I finally knew what it felt like to choose myself without apology. That's the thing nobody tells you about freedom when you've spent years confusing it with selfishness. At first, it's quiet. Not fireworks, not revenge music, not the hot, clean high of a movie ending, just quiet. A settled nervous system. A lock that answers only to your key. A bill paid from your own account because you chose to pay it, not because someone cornered you into proving your value. A garage with room to walk through. A kitchen that belongs to the woman standing in it. A life that, after years of being handled by other people, finally returns to your own hands. I sat on the porch until the rain turned cool enough to raise goosebumps on my arms. Then I went inside, locked the door, and left the lights on only where I wanted them.